Today we're talking about one of the greatest football card sets in history that never happened. Happy hobby, I'm David Guns. Today we are talking about 1984 football cards. Now you notice I didn't say NFL cards. I mean, we're talking about Topps. Topps is the manufacturer. But this is 1984 NFL and 1984 USFL. Man, just imagine putting those two. If we could have put those two leagues together, or at least done what Topps did in basketball when they had 1972 Topps was both the ABA cards and the NBA cards. Mash those together. If we did that in 1984, I'm going to talk about the amazing rookie cards that would have come out of that set. Now, I'm already saying it would have been the all-time greatest rookie card set from any football year. Right now, I would say probably the all-time greatest ever comes from 1957 Topps. Gino Marchetti, Dick Night Train Lane, Raymond Berry, Earl Morrall, Bart Starr, Johnny Unitas, and Paul Hornung. All those guys came from that 1957 Topps set. All of those guys, they're rookie cards from that set. That's a tough set to beat. If you ask me, that's pretty good. That's a pretty tough set to beat. But if we put the two sets combined, 1984 Topps NFL and 1984 Topps USFL, listen to the rookie cards that could have come out of this set. First, let's go through the NFL. We're talking John Elway. Pretty good. Howie Long, Dan Marino, Dwight Stephenson, Curt Warner, not the quarterback, but the running back. He was still pretty good. Jimbo Covert for the Bears, Hall of Famer. Eric Dickerson, Jackie Slater, one of the greatest all-time offensive linemen ever. Morten Andersen, one of the greatest kickers ever. Roger Craig with the high step, the knees, the big high. Darrell Green, one of the all-time greatest NFL cornerbacks ever. It's a pretty good list, right? It's pretty good. Well, the USFL was competing with the NFL for players. They were doling out big money, big contracts to players from college to entice them into playing in the USFL, so they could compete with the NFL and try to get a merger, much like the AFL and the NFL did 20 years before this, somewhere in there, late 60s. So here's the rookies from the 1984 Topps USFL set. Jim Kelly, pretty good. Steve Young, yeah, he's amazing. Reggie White and Anthony Carter, you remember him? Anthony Carter, Michigan State, also the Vikings, great receiver for the Vikings. Herschel Walker, Heisman winner. You know what's interesting is the USFL signed 3 Heisman winners in a row. They had Doug Flutie, they had Herschel Walker, and then Mike Rozier. 3 Heisman Trophy winners back to back to back. They got the USFL, but as we know, the USFL failed eventually. Small potatoes. Go look at the 30 for 30 documentary on that. It's called Small Potatoes, Who Killed the USFL? And I'll give you a tip. They're kind of implying that it was the guy that said the USFL was small potatoes. And he was a former owner of a USFL team. So without getting into politics, you could just guess who that might be. But it's a fantastic documentary. You want to check that out, 30 for 30. And while I mentioned all the superstar rookie cards that came out of that set, there were some other good rookie cards. They weren't necessarily superstar rookie cards, but great players like Andre Tippett from that set, Ricky Jackson. Those were from the Topps NFL set. And the USFL, there were guys like Bobby Hebert. You remember him with the Falcons. He was fantastic. And Marcus Dupree, one of the really cool, again, a 30 for 30 documentary, but he was a great story. Kind of a cautionary tale, but he's a good documentary you should look into also. And if we look at some of the non-rookie cards that were great players at the time, Joe Delamure, that the 1984 Topps NFL set had Joe Delamure, Joe Delamure from the Cleveland Browns. He was ended up being a Hall of Famer. Walter Payton, Joe Montana. They both had cards in that set. And the USFL set, some of the great superstars was Doug Plank, Brian Sipe, Doug Williams in that 1984 Topps USFL. Now, he was with the Oklahoma Outlaws. If you recall, he left the Bucks. There was a contract dispute, some racism involved with Hugh Culverhouse, my Buccaneers owner. So Doug Williams said, I'm done. Went to USFL. Ended up coming back eventually and won a Super Bowl with the Washington Redskins. But in between those NFL stops, he was with the Oklahoma Outlaws. And he was pretty good then, too. So as you can see, what could have been the 1984 Topps football card set could have been the greatest set of football cards ever. But alas, it did not happen. They did not combine the sets. We have to collect them separately. The USFL cards are a little more expensive because they're not quite as prolific. But whether you have any of these cards, whether you want some of these cards, whatever you do, make sure you have a happy hobby.